Ever wonder how certain ideas or movements just explode, gaining traction like wildfire within a community?
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Today on the deep dive, we're tackling exactly that. We're looking at something called a church planting movement, or CPM. Think of it as understanding the spark that ignites rapid, self-sustaining growth in community-based organizations.
That's right. And the sources we've gathered for this deep dive, they really examine this phenomenon in detail. We're exploring what allows these movements not just to begin, but to, well, multiply rapidly and maintain their momentum from within.
Okay.
And we have some compelling real-world examples, plus insightful analysis from David Garrison of the International Mission Board. He's got extensive global experience studying this firsthand.
So our mission today is to really dig into the core elements and the dynamics that make these church planting movements take off. We'll be using these real-world examples to understand what truly sparks and fuels this kind of rapid, community-driven expansion.
Sounds good?
Okay, let's get right into it then. What fundamentally is a church planting movement?
So, in essence, a CPM is a rapid and exponential increase of indigenous churches planting churches within a specific people group.
Okay, rapid, exponential, indigenous. Let's break that down.
Yeah, there are three crucial aspects there. First, it's rapid. We're not talking about, slow, linear growth. It's a quick and significant surge in the number of new church starts.
Right.
Second, it's exponential. Think of it not just as one church becoming two, but two becoming four, those four becoming 16, and so on.
Okay.
This kind of multiplication happens when the newly formed churches themselves are actively involved in starting even more new churches.
So it's like a self-fueling engine of growth, but right at the community level?
Exactly. And the third key piece is that these churches are indigenous. They originate and are led from within the specific people group.
Ah.
While the initial introduction of the core message might come from outside, that's often the role of a missionary, for instance, the driving force and leadership, they quickly become local.
That distinction between the initial contact and then the internal momentum, that seems really important. So just to be absolutely clear, what are some things that might look like growth but aren't actually a CPM?
That's a vital point.
Mm-hmm.
A CPM isn't simply evangelism that leads to some churches being planted here and there. While evangelism is essential, the overall aim of a CPM is much larger. It's about seeing an entire people group reached through this network of multiplying churches.
Okay.
It's also different from, say, a revival within existing churches. Revivals are powerful, absolutely, but a CPM is specifically about new communities forming and then replicating themselves.
Got it. New growth, not just refreshing old growth.
Right. And, while training local individuals to plant churches is valuable, it's not really a CPM if the primary energy and future growth remain dependent on those specific trained professionals. The defining characteristic is that the churches themselves become the primary church planters.
Okay, so it's this self-sustaining cycle, communities creating new communities. What's the ultimate aim behind all this activity?
Well, the overarching goal is the glorification of God. And this happens as individuals find a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and then come together to form communities of faith where they can continue to learn and grow together.
Right.
So, while the rapid increase in the number of churches is a key indicator of a CPM, it's really a means to a greater end, seeing a large number of people connected to their faith and forming these vital community hubs.
It sounds like a potentially transformative phenomenon for sure. So when we look at these movements that Garrison studied, what are the core elements that seem to be consistently present, like the non-negotiables?
Yeah, his research identified 10 universal elements. These were consistently found in every CPM he studied. The first is prayer.
Okay.
And this isn't just routine prayer. It's a deep, urgent reliance on prayer that is modeled and imitated, often by the missionary initiating things. They demonstrate that prayer is the fundamental source of power, and this becomes the foundation for the new believers and leaders.
So it's not just talking about prayer, it's showing its central importance through action.
Precisely. The second element is abundant gospel sowing. In every CPM, there's a continuous and widespread sharing of the core message of Jesus through, well, every available means.
It's like what?
Could be mass media, personal storytelling, creative approaches, you name it. It's the principle of broadly casting the message, the law of the harvest, to maximize the potential impact.
The more widely you share, the greater the opportunity for connection. Makes sense. What's number 3?
Third is intentional church planting. These movements don't just spring up randomly, like weeds. There's a deliberate strategy from the very beginning that focuses on forming new communities of faith. The goal isn't just individual conversions, it's the establishment of new churches.
So community formation is the explicit target right from the outset, not an afterthought.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The fourth universal element is scriptural authority. The Bible, and ideally translated into the people's heart language, becomes the unquestioned and primary guide for belief and practice. It's the ultimate source of truth and guidance for them.
Having that accessible shared foundation seems crucial for unity and direction, especially when things are moving fast. What about how these movements are led?
Right, that leads to the fifth element, local leadership. CPMs really flourish when leaders emerge from within the community itself, rather than relying solely on external figures. The role of the initial missionary, if there is one, shifts towards mentoring and empowering these local leaders.
Okay, so empowering from within.
And closely linked to this is the sixth element, lay leadership. These movements are primarily driven by individuals who are not professional clergy. Often they're bivocational, deeply embedded in the communities they're reaching.
Ah, so not necessarily full-time ministers.
Exactly. And this dramatically increases the number of potential leaders available. The reliance on lay leaders isn't just practical. It fundamentally unlocks this distributed network of influence. It taps into existing social fabrics in a way that maybe professionalized leadership often can't. This is a key driver of that exponential growth we talked about.
So it's really about empowering people within their own communities to take ownership and lead, not just relying on an outside expert.
Absolutely. Then, the seventh universal element is the widespread use of cell or house churches.
Okay.
These are small, easily reproducible groups, typically ranging from, say, 10 to 30 people who meet in homes or storefronts or other accessible locations.
Is there a difference between cell and house churches?
Yeah, a slight distinction sometimes. Cell churches often operate within a larger organizational framework, maybe connected to a bigger church structure. House churches tend to be more independent, more autonomous. But both models are highly adaptable and really facilitate rapid expansion.
Small, flexible, easily multiplied. Sounds like it aligns perfectly with the rapid and exponential nature of CPMs. What's the eighth element?
Churches planting churches. This is really the engine that drives the exponential growth. The established faith communities, even the new ones, actively take on the responsibility of starting new ones. There's an inherent understanding that reproduction is just a natural part of being a church. It doesn't require ongoing external assistance or permission.
So multiplication becomes ingrained in the very DNA of these churches from the get-go.
Exactly. Ninth is rapid reproduction. There's just a high rate of new community formation. It's seen as vital for sustaining the movement's momentum, and it reflects a real sense of urgency.
Okay.
And finally, the 10th universal element is healthy communities. This isn't just about numbers. These are functioning, holistic communities. They demonstrate 5 core characteristics: worship, outreach, which includes both evangelism and mission, education, discipleship and teaching, ministry, serving others, and fellowship.
So it's about both the quantity and the quality of these new communities.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really helpful framework, those 10 universal elements. Now let's look at some real-world examples to see how these principles actually play out in different contexts. Where should we start?
Let's begin with Latin America, maybe in the 1990s. The backdrop there was, well, a history of authoritarian governments, coupled with relatively high literacy rates and a predominantly Catholic population that had experienced periods of both religious suppression and later liberalization.
Okay, interesting mix.
And what happened was significant growth in both Northern and Southern Baptist unions. This was after a time when missionaries had actually been expelled, and there was considerable persecution.
Right.
The increasing adoption of house churches was a major factor in accelerating this growth.
So what were some of the key drivers behind that growth in Latin America? What really fueled it?
Several factors were at play. The initial isolation caused by the expulsion of missionaries actually compelled the local churches to become more self-reliant, more indigenous.
Necessity being the mother of invention.
Kind of. Also, gospel radio broadcasts in Spanish, their heart language, reached a vast audience. There was also consistent prayer support coming from abroad. When missionaries strategically returned in the late 1980s, their focus was really on prayer, discipleship, and training local leaders without creating financial dependence.
That seems key.
Hugely important. The fact that scripture and worship were in their heart language was crucial, as was a strong emphasis on prayer. They were actually described as people on their knees.
Wow.
Then, the economic crisis in 1992 also contributed, interestingly. People increasingly gathered in homes, fostering closer community and, well, growth. And finally, the mobilization and training of lay missionaries proved to be a significant catalyst.
It's fascinating how even something negative like persecution can act as a catalyst for self-reliance and organic development.
It really is. Sometimes pressure refines things.
So, what were the key lessons learned from that Latin American experience? What should we take away?
Well, key takeaways include the significant impact of the shift to house churches, the absolute necessity of local leadership taking ownership, the way persecution, counterintuitively, can actually solidify the movement, the strategic role missionaries can play in providing initial vision and methodology without fostering long-term dependency.
Right, that balance.
Exactly. And the immense power unleashed when lay people are mobilized to lead and share their faith.
Fascinating. Okay, let's shift gears. A very different part of the world. The Yanyan region in China in the early 1990s. What was the social and cultural landscape there?
Early 1990s China, it was a period of immense social change. Rapid economic growth led to significant inequalities, widespread urbanization was disrupting traditional community structures, and there was this general search for new meaning and hope, especially following the events of Tiananmen Square.
Right, a time of flux. And what unfolded in Yanyan during this period?
It was pretty dramatic. In 1991, when a strategy coordinator arrived, there were only 3 house churches with about 85, mostly elderly members, and honestly, little sense of a future for growth.
Okay, over the next 4 years, this just exploded to 550 churches with more than 55,000 believers.
Wow, from 85 to 55,000 in 4 years. That's an astonishing rate of growth.
Yeah.
What were the key factors that fueled that explosion?
Well, prayer was foundational from the outset, again. The coordinator also implemented a specific training and structure model known as POUCH.
POUCH.
Yeah, it's an acronym. Participative Bible study worship, obedience to scripture, unpaid multiple lay leaders, cell churches with fewer than 15 people, and meeting in homes or storefronts.
Okay, POUCH. Very practical.
Very. They also used a method called response filtering to connect outreach efforts directly with forming new groups, and a clear 4-step church planting pattern. Model, assist, watch, leave. Leadership training was primarily done through ongoing mentoring, not formal classrooms.
It's fascinating how that lines up with the first universal element we discussed, that vital and imitated prayer life, but also this very intentional structure.
Exactly. A very intentional, reproducible system combined with a strong emphasis on local leadership and proactive outreach. So, what were the key insights from the Yanyan experience?
The critical factors seem to be the focus on laid-led evangelism directed towards those who hadn't yet heard the message, the model of having multiple unpaid leaders, which enabled that rapid scaling, the adaptability of house churches in that specific cultural context, and importantly, the strategic decision of the initial missionary to step back relatively early to really encourage the movement's indigenous nature.
Getting out of the way at the right time.
Essentially, yes, fostering independence.
Let's shift our focus again, this time to the Buldari people of India. What was their situation like?
The Buldari represent a huge linguistic group, maybe 90 million people spread across 4 states in India. They are largely rural, experience significant poverty and illiteracy, and are predominantly Hindu. The area has important Hindu holy sites, and the influence of the Brahmin caste is strong.
A challenging context. And what happened within the Buldari community in terms of church growth?
Well, the initial attempts to plant churches back in 1989 tragically resulted in the murder of the first 6 individuals involved.
Oh, wow. That's brutal.
It was. But then, in 1992, there was a significant turning point. They adopted the man of peace approach from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10.
How did that work?
Individuals would move in with a receptive local person, someone open, and begin discipling their entire family network through chronological Bible storytelling, often even before they formally became believers.
Interesting. Disciple first, then conversion follows.
Yes, and this led to family-based conversions, which really fit the culture, and then a period of rapid growth. From 28 churches to 2,000 churches and about 55,000 believers in just 7 years.
That's a remarkable turnaround, especially after such a tragic start. What were the crucial elements that led to this transformation?
Learning from the initial setbacks, definitely, and demonstrating a willingness to experiment with different approaches was vital. Identifying and training a local co-strategy coordinator created this essential synergy between external support and effective local implementation.
The insider-outsider partnership.
Exactly. A global prayer network provided crucial backing, and while external funding was utilized, it was strategically allocated towards training and supporting itinerant planters, not subsidizing pastors or church buildings. That was key to prevent dependency. Right, avoiding the subsidy trap. Yeah. And despite some denominational differences that emerged, a shared commitment to biblical authority served as a unifying factor. And that emphasis on family-based conversions and leadership, as I said, proved highly effective within their cultural context.
So even with external resources involved, the primary focus remained on fostering local ownership and long-term sustainability. What are the key lessons we can draw from the Pildari experience?
I think the experience underscores the importance of learning from failure and maintaining an openness to experimentation and rigorous evaluation. The central role of honoring Christ and adhering to biblical authority as overarching principles was clearly key. And in a context with high illiteracy, the power of oral communication of the Bible, the storytelling, cannot be overstated.
Good point. Orality is huge. Okay, our final detailed example takes us to the Khmer people of Cambodia. What was the historical context they were emerging from?
Cambodia, in the latter half of the 20th century, endured just unimaginable suffering. War, the horrific genocide under the Khmer Rouge regime.
Yes, the killing fields.
Exactly. This devastation crippled the infrastructure, society, significantly eroded traditional Buddhism. Existing Christian communities were also severely impacted. By 1990, the evangelical population had dwindled to maybe around 600 individuals nationwide.
A truly devastating backdrop. What sparked the growth in that context?
The assignment of a strategy coordinator in 1989 proved to be a major turning point. By 1999, the Protestant believer population had grown dramatically to over 60,000. Baptists formed the largest group within that.
Another massive increase.
The coordinator prioritized mentoring Cambodian laymen from the very beginning. They developed a church planting manual in the Karak language and effectively utilized resources like the Jesus film and Bible storying. He really instilled a vision for a national CPM and played a key role in forming the Khmer Baptist Convention.
So building local infrastructure and vision.
Yes, and prayer mobilization and accounts of supernatural events also played a part. They established practical, modular rural leadership training programs and emphasized the 2:22 principle of modeling and mentoring based on 2 Timothy 2.2, entrusting things to faithful people who will teach others also.
Ah, the ripple effect of training. It sounds like a very deliberate and strategic approach focused on empowering local believers right from the start.
Absolutely. The local leaders became the driving force behind the vision. The coordinator observed that churches started by other churches were far more likely to reproduce, unlike those initiated by externally funded planters.
Interesting observation.
Yeah. They intentionally set timelines for new church formation to encourage rapid multiplication. The remaining missionaries adopted a supportive, kind of low-profile footman role, not the main players. The Khmer Baptist Convention set ambitious goals for growth, and they even developed a unique church governance structure based on a central committee of 7 lay leaders.
So even in the aftermath of immense tragedy, a clear strategy focused on local ownership and rapid multiplication proved incredibly effective. What are the key lessons from the Khmer experience?
Well, the Khmer example really highlights the critical importance of having an intentional church planting strategy, especially when you compare it to agencies that lacked such a focus in the same area. Empowering local believers from the very beginning was absolutely crucial. The value of that 222 principle, modeling and mentoring, proved invaluable. And the local ownership of the CPM vision by the Cambodian Baptist Convention was a powerful engine for growth.
It's striking how different these contexts are. Latin America, China, India, Cambodia, geographically, culturally, yet we see some consistent themes and principles recurring across all of them. Beyond these detailed examples, the source material also mentions other emerging movements.
Yes, encouragingly, there are indications of CPMs emerging in various other regions around the world. Among the Maasai people in Tanzania and Kenya, in parts of Southeast Asia, in eastern India, within a specific province in China again, in a Western European country, and even in Brazil.
Wow.
These examples further illustrate that this phenomenon isn't confined to specific cultural or geographical boundaries.
So these principles appear to have a much wider applicability than just the specific cases we've examined in depth. Now, moving beyond those 10 universal elements, are there other frequently observed characteristics, things that tend to accompany these movements, even if not always present?
Yes, there are. Garrison lists at least 10 other characteristics that are frequently found in CPMs. While maybe not universal in every single one, they appear often and offer further insights into the dynamics. Things like worship services conducted in the heart language of the people, evangelistic efforts that have strong communal implications reaching families and social networks, not just isolated individuals, the rapid integration of new converts into the life and ministry of the church.
Getting them involved quickly.
Right. a noticeable passion and fearlessness among believers. Often, a perceived cost or price to pay associated with becoming a Christian, maybe social pressure, sometimes even physical persecution. Also, often a sense of a leadership vacuum or spiritual hunger within the society that creates an openness to the core message. The use of on-the-job training for developing church leaders, rather than pulling them out for long formal education, decentralized leadership structures, a tendency for outsiders, the missionaries, to maintain a lower profile over time.
Okay.
And, somewhat surprisingly, a recurring pattern of significant personal suffering experienced by the missionaries involved in successful CPMs. It really underscores the deep commitment involved.
That last point is quite profound. It suggests a real spiritual dynamic at play, perhaps a cost to pioneering this kind of work. Turning to practical application, if someone listening is interested in fostering something like a CPM, what are some actionable steps or insights they should consider?
Yeah, there are several practical handles, as Garrison calls them. One is to adopt a CPM mindset right from the very beginning, always keeping that end vision of rapid multiplication in mind.
Start with the end in mind.
Exactly. Another is to develop comprehensive strategies that intentionally address prayer, communicating the core message, evangelism, and the planting of new churches all integrated. It's also crucial to continuously evaluate all activities and approaches against that ultimate vision. Is what we're doing actually leading towards multiplication?
Constant course correction.
Right. Employing precision harvesting, focusing efforts on those individuals and networks who are already receptive can be very effective. Preparing new believers for potential challenges or opposition is vital for their long-term growth and resilience.
Building resilience.
Yeah. Many successful movements begin by gathering people into pre-conversion evangelistic groups first. The POCH model we saw in China offers a replicable framework, developing multiple leaders within each new group from the outset, utilizing on-the-job training, and following that model assist watch leave approach are all variable practical strategies.
Those seem like concrete and, importantly, replicable approaches. Conversely, what are some common pitfalls or obstacles, things that can hinder or even stop a CPM from taking root or flourishing?
Oh, there are definitely pitfalls. Imposing unnecessary extra-biblical requirements on new churches is a big one,
Like what?
like needing specific types of buildings or requiring paid staff before they're considered real churches. That stifles their growth and reproducibility. Encouraging new churches to abandon their local cultural identity and adopt foreign norms can be really detrimental.
Losing identity.
Yes. Negative examples from existing believers can be a significant barrier, of course. Utilizing church models that are heavily reliant on external resources, creating dependency, that's a classic mistake. Placing extra-biblical requirements on church leaders, like insisting on extensive formal theological training before they can lead, can severely limit the pool of potential leaders.
Restricting leadership.
Exactly. Thinking about church planting in a purely linear, step-by-step fashion can cause you to miss opportunities for simultaneous growth and multiplication. Planting what are sometimes called frog churches, those that kind of sit and wait for people to come to them, rather than actively going out, that's a major hindrance.
Passive versus active.
Right. And finally, while having a strategic approach is important, being overly prescriptive and not allowing for the organic leading of the Spirit, not being flexible, that can also be a significant obstacle.
Those are important warnings. Emphasizing the need for flexibility, cultural sensitivity, and focusing on those indigenous reproducible models. What about situations where a CPM might seem to be slowing down, or maybe not quite reaching its potential? Are there ways to refine or reignite the momentum?
Yes, definitely. Even in situations where a movement seems to be stalling, or maybe it's a near miss, adjustments can often be made. Sometimes the pace of discipleship or the expectation for new churches to plant other churches needs to be intentionally accelerated.
Upping the tempo?
Kind of.
Yeah.
For instance, maybe shortening the duration of initial chronological Bible storytelling or evangelistic Bible studies might be considered in some contexts. Raising the expectations and responsibilities placed on new believers in terms of sharing their faith and forming new communities that can also help to reignite momentum. Ultimately, though, a renewed focus on spiritual vitality and a passionate commitment among both missionaries and local believers to seeing a true CPM unfold is often the real key.
Right, the heart behind it. This has been a truly illuminating deep dive into the world of church planting movements. Just to summarize, what are the absolute key takeaways that our listeners should remember?
I'd say the core definition is essential. A rapid and exponential increase of indigenous churches planting churches within a specific people group. Remember those three words. rapid, exponential, indigenous.
Got it.
And the 10 universal elements we discussed: prayer, abundant gospel sowing, intentional church planting, scriptural authority, local leadership, lay leadership, cell or house churches, churches planting churches, rapid reproduction, and healthy communities. They provide a really valuable framework for understanding the fundamental dynamics at work in these movements.
So while these principles are observed within a specific religious context, it feels like they offer valuable insights into how rapid grassroots growth can be achieved in various community-driven endeavors, right?
Right.
When the right combination of foundational elements and adaptable strategies are in place.
Exactly. It's about organic, self-replicating growth from within. And it leads to a final question, maybe for you listening to consider. How might these principles of rapid indigenous growth be applied in other areas of community building, or the spread of impactful ideas in our world today? Think about that crucial balance between providing maybe some central guidance and empowering local initiative, and the vital role that shared vision and organic replication play in any movement that seeks to scale and sustain itself.
Powerful food for thought indeed. And as always, the source material we've explored today, David Garrison's work, contains a wealth of additional detail and nuance. We highly encourage you to delve into the provided document for even deeper learning.
Absolutely worth the read.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.